It was a quiet morning in New York City, the kind that made people forget how busy life could get. Emma Carter sat at her desk inside NASA's headquarters, staring intently at rows of numbers and graphs on her computer screen. She was an astrophysicist, someone who studied the stars and planets, and today she felt like something unusual was happening. The data in front of her didn't make sense. Strange patterns were showing up in Earth's magnetic field. The invisible shield that protected the planet from harmful radiation, these patterns weren't natural, were too precise, almost as if they had been created by intelligent beings. Emma leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. She had spent hours trying to figure out what was causing these anomalies, but nothing added up. Her colleague, Daniel Harper, walked into the room holding a cup of coffee. He looked tired, his dark hair messy from running his fingers through it too many times. "Still stuck on those weird readings?" he asked, placing the coffee next to her keyboard. "Yeah," Emma replied, pointing at the screen. "Look at this. It's not random noise. There's structure here, patterns we've never seen before." Daniel squinted at the monitor, taking a sip of his coffee. After a moment, he frowned. "You think it's artificial?" Emma nodded slowly. "That's exactly what I'm thinking. But if it is, where's it coming from? And why now?" Before they could discuss it further, their boss, Dr. Sarah Bennett, entered the room. She was a tall woman with sharp features and an even sharper mind. "Emma, Daniel," she said, her voice serious. "We just got word from the United Nations. Something big is going on." The two scientists exchanged worried glances. "Do you mean?" Emma asked. Dr. Bennett hesitated for a second, then explained. "Satellites all over the world have picked up strange signals. They're not radio waves or anything we've dealt with before, just symbols and numbers. No one knows what they mean yet." Emma felt her heart race. Could these signals be connected to the anomaly she'd been studying? She opened her mouth to ask more questions, but Dr. Bennett cut her off. "General Hayes wants us to present our findings at an emergency meeting tomorrow. Whatever this is, it's serious." Later that evening, Emma couldn't stop thinking about the signals. She sat alone in her small apartment, surrounded by books, and papers scattered across every surface. Outside her window, the city lights twinkled like stars trapped in glass. She opened her laptop and began reviewing the data again, searching for answers. As she worked, she thought about how much the world had changed in recent years. Humanity had reached farther into space than ever before, sending probes to distant planets and building telescopes. It's powerful enough to see galaxies billions of light years away. But now, it seemed someone or something was watching them back. The next morning, Emma and Daniel arrived at the UN headquarters, a towering building filled with diplomats and military leaders from around the globe. Inside the conference room, tension hung thick in the air. General Robert Hayes stood at the front of the room, his uniform crisp and his expression grim. He was a man in his late 50s, with graying hair and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Behind him, a large screen displayed images of the mysterious signals captured by satellites. "Ladies and gentlemen," General Hayes began, addressing the crowd, "we are facing a situation unlike anything we've encountered before. Over the past week, multiple countries have reported disruptions to their defense systems. Radar stations, missile silos, and even nuclear facilities have been temporarily disabled by energy pulses. No lives have been lost, but the message is clear. Whoever is doing this has the power to strike at will."
A light murmur rippled through the
room. Some attendees shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others whispered urgently to their neighbors. Emma glanced at Daniel, who looked as uneasy as she felt. This wasn't just a scientific mystery anymore. It was a potential crisis. When it was Emma's turn to speak, she stepped forward, clutching a folder tightly in her hands. "Based on our analysis," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves, "these energy pulses appear to be targeting specific locations, places associated with military operations. At the same time, we've detected unusual activity in Earth's magnetic field, which coincides with the timing of the attacks." She paused, letting her words sink in. "While we can't say for certain who or what's responsible, the evidence suggests that these events are linked." We believe the signals intercepted by our satellites may hold the key to understanding what's happening. As soon as she finished speaking, the room erupted into arguments. Some officials demanded immediate action, calling for increased surveillance and weapon deployment. Others argued for restraint, warning against jumping to conclusions without more information. Amid the chaos, Emma noticed a woman sitting near the back of the room. She was younger than most of the attendees, with short blonde hair and a determined look on her face. Her nameplate read Senator Laura Bennett. Laura stood up suddenly, raising her hand to silence the crowd. When everyone turned to look at her, she spoke with authority. "This isn't just a scientific issue," she said firmly. "It's a matter of national security. If these attacks escalate, we need to be ready to defend ourselves. That means preparing for the worst case scenario." Her words sent a chill down Emma's spine. She knew Laura was right about one thing. Humanity couldn't afford to ignore the threat, but escalating tensions might only make things worse. Before anyone could respond, General Hayes intervened. "Enough," he said sharply. "We don't have time for infighting. Dr. Carter, I want your team to focus on deciphering those signals. Find out who's behind this and what they want." Back at NASA, Emma and Daniel threw themselves into their work. Days turned into nights as they pored over the data, searching for clues. Emma became obsessed with finding a pattern in the symbols, convinced that they held the answers they needed. One evening, after hours of frustration, she finally spotted something, a sequence of numbers that repeated throughout the transmission. "Daniel," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with excitement. "Come look at this." He hurried over, peering at her screen. "What am I looking at?" "It's a mathematical progression," Emma explained. "These numbers correspond to coordinates." Somewhere close to Earth, Daniel's eyes widened. "You think that's where the signals are coming from?" "Do," Emma said, already typing furiously on her keyboard. "If we can pinpoint the location, maybe we can figure out who's sending them." Within minutes, they had narrowed down the source to a remote area near Area 51, a place long shrouded in secrecy and conspiracy theories. Emma immediately called General Hayes to report their discovery. By dawn, a team was assembled, led by Colonel Ryan Mitchell, a seasoned soldier known for his calm demeanor under pressure. Emma and Daniel joined the mission, eager to uncover the truth firsthand, as they boarded the helicopter that would take them to the site. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. The world was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Deep down, she hoped they could find a way to avoid conflict, not just for humanity's sake, but for the sake of whatever or whoever was out there. The helicopter ride was long and bumpy, the desert stretching endlessly below them like a sea of golden sand. Emma sat by the window, her mind racing with questions. What would they find at the coordinates? Would it be some kind of alien artifact? Or just another dead end? Beside her, Daniel flipped through a notebook, jotting down ideas about how to approach whatever lay ahead. In the front of the chopper, Colonel Ryan Mitchell kept his eyes fixed on the horizon, his face calm but focused. When they finally arrived at the site, the team stepped out into the blazing heat. The air shimmered with waves of warmth, distorting the landscape. At first glance, there didn't seem to be anything unusual, just endless dunes and rocky outcrops. But then someone shouted, pointing toward the sky. Hovering above the ground was a massive holographic projection. It wasn't solid, more like a glowing image suspended in midair. The projection displayed intricate symbols and patterns that pulsed gently, as if alive. Some of the shapes resembled human letters, while others were completely unfamiliar. The sight was both mesmerizing and unnerving. Emma approached cautiously, her heart pounding. She had seen strange things in her career, but nothing like this. "It's communicating," she whispered, half to herself. "It has to be." Daniel joined her, holding up a tablet to scan the projection. "Look at this," he said, showing her the screen. "These symbols match parts of the signals we've been studying. It's definitely trying to say something." Ryan stepped forward, his hand resting on the holster of his sidearm. "Can you understand it?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Not yet," Emma admitted. "But I think we can." If we analyze the patterns, maybe we can decode them. For the next several hours, the team worked tirelessly under the scorching sun. Emma and Daniel took turns feeding data into their computers, comparing the symbols to known languages and mathematical sequences. Slowly, pieces of the puzzle began to come together. The message wasn't written in words, at least, not ones humans could easily recognize, but in concepts. Shapes represented ideas like balance, order, and consequence. Numbers indicated distances and timescales. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Emma let out a gasp. "I think I've got part of it," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. On her screen, a rough translation appeared. "Your aggression disrupts cosmic balance. Cease or face consequences." The words hit the group like a thunderclap. Everyone froze, staring at each other in stunned silence. Ryan broke the quiet first. "Aggression. What does it mean by that?" Emma frowned, thinking hard. Maybe it's referring to our activities in space. All the satellites. Weapons systems, even plans for mining asteroids. We've been expanding so quickly. To them, it might look like we're preparing for war. Daniel nodded slowly. If they see us as a threat that could explain the attacks, they're warning us to back off. Ryan crossed his arms, his expression grim. "Even if that's true, we can't just shut everything down. Not without knowing more," Emma agreed. But she also knew they couldn't ignore the message. "We need to respond," she said firmly. "Let them know we're not trying to start a fight. If we don't, things could get much worse." Back at command, the mood was tense. General Hayes listened intently as Emma explained their findings, his brow furrowed in thought. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "You're telling me we're dealing with beings who view humanity as a danger?" he said slowly. "And now, they've given us an ultimatum." "It's not exactly an ultimatum yet," Emma corrected, "but it's close. We have a chance to show them we're willing to listen." Senator Laura Bennett, who had joined the meeting, scoffed. "Listen, you want us to roll over and play nice because some glowing light told us to? This is ridiculous." Emma turned to face her, her frustration boiling over. "With all due respect, Senator, we don't have a choice. These beings are far more advanced than we are. If we provoke them, we'll lose everything." Laura glared at her but didn't argue further. Instead, she turned to General Hayes. "Fine, let's hear your plan, Dr. Carter. How do you propose?" "We respond to this?" Emma took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "We send a message back using the same frequency they used to contact us. But instead of numbers and symbols, we include images, music, anything that shows we're intelligent and peaceful. We need to prove we're worth talking to." General Hayes considered this for a moment, then nodded. "Do it, but make it quick. Whatever these things are, they won't wait forever." Over the next 2 days, Emma and Daniel worked around the clock to craft the response. They filled the transmission with pictures of Earth, its oceans, forests, and cities, and recordings of classical music and spoken language. They even included simple animations showing humans reaching out in friendship. Every detail was carefully chosen to convey peace and cooperation as the final touches were added. Emma couldn't help but feel nervous. What if the aliens misunderstood? Or worse, what if they ignored the message entirely? Still, she reminded herself that doing nothing wasn't an option. Humanity had to take the risk. When the message was ready, it was broadcast into space using the most powerful satellite array available. For a few moments, everyone held their breath, waiting for a reaction. But nothing happened. The hologram at the desert site vanished shortly after the transmission, leaving behind only empty air. Days passed, and no reply came. The world grew restless. News outlets picked up the story, speculating wildly about the nature of the threat. Some called for immediate retaliation, while others urged patience. Protests erupted in major cities, with crowds chanting slogans ranging from "Defend Earth" to "Peace Now." Inside NASA, the pressure mounted. Dr. Sarah Bennett pulled Emma aside one afternoon, her expression troubled. "People are losing faith, Emma. If we don't hear back soon, The government might decide to act unilaterally. Emma clenched her fists, frustration bubbling inside her. Acting without understanding will only make things worse. We need more time? Sarah sighed, shaking her head. My time is one thing we don't have. That night, unable to sleep, Emma wandered onto the rooftop of NASA's headquarters. The city lights stretched out before her, a glittering reminder of everything humanity had built. She thought about the aliens, whoever or whatever they were. Were they truly hostile or simply afraid? And what would happen if diplomacy failed? Her phone buzzed in her pocket, startling her. It was a text from Daniel. Emergency meeting. Get to the lab now. Heart racing. Emma rushed downstairs. When she entered the lab, she found Daniel and Ryan huddled over a computer screen. Their faces were pale, their expressions grave. What is it? Emma asked, dread pooling in her stomach. Daniel pointed at the screen. Another transmission just came in. Emma moved closer, her eyes scanning the new message. Like the previous ones, this one was direct and chilling. Stop attacking or we stop pretending to be polite. The room fell silent. Emma felt a cold knot form in her chest. This wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a threat. Whoever these beings were, they meant business. Ryan broke the silence first. So much for diplomacy, he muttered darkly. Emma shook her head, determination replacing her fear. No, this changes nothing. We still have to try. If we give up now, we've already lost. Ryan met her gaze, his expression softening slightly. Then what's the next move? Emma took a deep breath, her mind racing. We go to them. The idea of going to the aliens was met with resistance, skepticism, and outright fear. When Emma first proposed it during an emergency meeting at NASA headquarters, the room erupted into chaos. General Hayes leaned forward in his chair, his face unreadable as he listened to the heated arguments around him. Senator Laura Bennett was the loudest voice against the plan. Are you serious? Laura snapped, slamming her hand on the table. You want to send humans into space to meet these things? We don't even know if they're friendly. For all we know, they'll capture or destroy us the moment we get close. Emma stood her ground, though her hands trembled slightly. She had expected this reaction, but refused to back down. We don't have another option, she said firmly. If we stay here waiting for them to make the next move, we're giving up control. Going to them shows we're willing to take a risk for peace. It's our best chance. Daniel nodded in agreement, stepping up to support her. Think about it, he added. Every signal we've received so far has been precise and calculated. They haven't attacked cities or caused mass casualties. They're trying to communicate, not wipe us out. That has to mean something. Ryan Mitchell, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. His deep voice cut through the noise like a knife. I'll lead the mission, he said simply. All eyes turned to him. If anyone's going, it should be me. I've got the training, and I can handle whatever we find out there. For a moment, no one said anything. The weight of what Ryan was offering sank in. This wasn't just a scientific expedition. It was a potential suicide mission. If something went wrong, there might not be a way back. General Hayes finally broke the silence. Colonel Mitchell, are you sure about this? Ryan didn't hesitate. Yes, sir. Someone needs to do it, and I'm the right person for the job. Felt a mix of gratitude and guilt. Ryan was putting himself in harm's way because of her idea. She wanted to argue, to insist that someone else go instead, but she knew he was right. He was the best choice. After much debate, the decision was made. A spacecraft would be prepared for launch within days, equipped with everything needed for long-distance travel and communication. Emma and Daniel would join Ryan on the mission, providing scientific expertise while he handled navigation and security. It was a risky plan, but everyone agreed it was worth a try. Preparations moved quickly, almost too quickly. Engineers worked around the clock to retrofit an existing vessel, adding extra shielding and advanced scanning equipment. Supplies were loaded onto the ship, including food, water, and medical kits. Meanwhile, Emma and Daniel spent hours refining their approach to contacting the aliens. They studied every transmission they'd received, looking for patterns or clues that might help them understand the beings better. As the launch date approached, tensions grew. Protesters gathered outside NASA's gates holding signs that read "No Surrender" and "Protect Humanity." Some accused the team of abandoning Earth, while others begged them to succeed. Inside the facility, tempers flared as deadlines loomed and mistakes piled up. Even Ryan, usually calm under pressure, seemed on edge. One evening, after another long day of testing and troubleshooting, Emma found herself alone in the lab. She stared at the glowing screen of her laptop, replaying the alien messages over and over again. Something about them still didn't sit right with her. Yes, they were warnings, but why now? Why had the aliens waited until humanity reached a certain level of technological advancement before making contact? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Ryan stepped inside carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to her without saying a word, then sat down across from her. "You look like you haven't slept in days," he said gently. Emma managed a weak smile. "Probably because I haven't." Ryan sipped his coffee, watching her carefully. "What's bothering you?" She hesitated, unsure how to put her feelings into words. "It's just, everything feels so rushed. Like we're gambling with the future of the planet based on guesses and hunches. What if we're wrong? What if we make things worse?" Ryan set his cup down and leaned forward. "Listen to me," he said, his voice steady. "You're doing the right thing. I've seen enough wars in my life to know when fighting isn't the answer. These aliens aren't attacking blindly, they're warning us. It means they care about consequences. And if they cared enough to warn us, maybe they'll care enough to listen." Emma nodded slowly, feeling some of the tension ease. "Thanks, Ryan, I needed to hear that." He smiled faintly. "Besides, if anyone can figure out how to talk to them, it's you. You've got guts, Carter. Don't forget that." The morning of the launch arrived sooner than anyone expected. The spacecraft, named Odyssey, stood gleaming on the launch pad, its sleek design reflecting the early sunlight. Crowds of reporters and spectators gathered nearby, cameras flashing as the crew made their way to the ship. Emma carried a small bag filled with personal items, a photo of her family, a journal, and a book she'd been meaning to read for months. She tried to focus on the details, anything to keep her mind off the enormity of what they were about to do. As they climbed aboard, Ryan gave each of them a reassuring nod. "Remember," he said, his voice calm but firm, "we're not just representing ourselves. We're representing everyone back home. Let's show them we're ready for this." Once strapped into their seats, the countdown began. Emma gripped the armrests tightly, her heart pounding as the engines roared to life. The vibrations shook the entire ship, growing stronger with each passing second. Then, with a deafening blast, Odyssey lifted off the ground, climbing higher and higher into the sky. Through the window, Earth shrank rapidly below them, its blue and green surface fading into the blackness of space. Emma felt a strange mix of awe and dread. They were leaving behind everything they knew, venturing into the unknown with nothing but hope and determination. Hours later, as the adrenaline wore off, reality began to sink in. The ship's systems hummed quietly in the background, and the vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly in every direction. Emma floated in zero gravity, adjusting to the sensation as she reviewed the coordinates programmed into the navigation system. According to the data, their destination lay beyond Pluto's orbit, near the edge of the solar system. Daniel drifted over, holding a tablet. "Still on course," he reported. "ETA is 3 days. "Good," Ryan replied, checking the ship's monitors. "Let's use that time to double-check everything. I don't want any surprises when we get there." Emma nodded already, pulling up files on her laptop. As she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every now and then, she glanced out the window, half expecting to see something or someone out there. But the stars remained silent, their cold light offering no answers. On the 3rd day, they reached the coordinates. At first, there was nothing, just empty space where the readings suggested something should be. Then, suddenly, a massive structure emerged from the darkness. It was enormous, easily larger than Earth's moon. Its surface shimmered with iridescent colors pulsating softly like a living organism. Strange shapes moved across it, shifting and rearranging themselves in patterns Emma couldn't decipher. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Ryan activated the ship's communication system. "This is Colonel Ryan Mitchell of Earth's United Nations Defense Coalition," he said, his voice steady despite the awe in his eyes. "We come in peace, seeking dialogue." For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a response came not in words, but in waves of light and sound that filled the ship. It was overwhelming, like standing in the middle of a symphony played by instruments no human had ever heard. Emma stared at the display, tears welling up in her eyes. They weren't alone anymore. Whatever these beings were, they were listening. The waves of light and sound continued to wash over the crew, filling the small spacecraft with an eerie yet mesmerizing energy. Emma clutched the edge of her seat, her mind racing as she tried to make sense of what was happening. The aliens. Response wasn't in words or symbols, it was something deeper, almost like emotions translated into sensory experiences. The light shifted between warm golden hues and icy blues, while the sounds ranged from deep, resonant tones to high-pitched melodies that seemed to echo inside their heads. Ryan gripped the controls tightly, his eyes fixed on the massive structure outside the window. "Stay calm," he said firmly, though his voice betrayed a hint of unease. "We don't know if this is a greeting or something else." Daniel floated nearby, holding a tablet that displayed erratic readings from the ship's sensors. "Whatever. It's affecting our systems," he muttered, typing furiously. "I'm trying to stabilize them, but it's not easy." Emma forced herself to focus. She knew they couldn't afford to panic, not now. They were finally face to face with the beings behind the mysterious signals. Taking a deep breath, she activated the communication system again. "This is Dr. Emma Carter of Earth," she began, her voice steady, despite the chaos around her. "We're here to understand your message and find a way to coexist peacefully." Her words hung in the air, unanswered. The lights pulsed brighter for a moment, then dimmed slightly, as if reacting to her voice. It wasn't much, but it gave Emma hope. Maybe the aliens were listening. Over the next few hours, the crew worked tirelessly to establish some form of meaningful contact. Emma and Daniel analyzed every detail of the light and sound patterns, searching for clues about how the aliens communicated. They noticed that certain colors corresponded to specific frequencies, while others seemed linked to changes in intensity. It was like piecing together a puzzle without knowing the final picture. Meanwhile, Ryan kept a close eye on the ship's systems, ensuring they remained functional despite the interference. He also monitored the alien structure, which loomed ominously outside their windows. Occasionally, sections of its surface would ripple and shift, revealing glimpses of inner mechanisms that defied explanation. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just a ship, it was alive, or at least partially so. As the hours dragged on, fatigue began to set in. Emma rubbed her temples, feeling the strain of days spent preparing for this moment, but she refused to give up. Every second counted, and failure wasn't an option. Finally, after countless attempts, she had an idea. "Let's try music," she suggested suddenly, turning to Daniel. "They responded to our earlier transmission when we included classical pieces. Maybe they'll react more strongly if we use something familiar." Daniel nodded, quickly pulling up recordings of well-known compositions. Together, they selected a piece by Beethoven's Symphony 9, known for its universal themes of unity and joy. As the music played through the ship's external speakers, the alien structure reacted almost immediately. The lights brightened, pulsing in rhythm with the melody, while the sounds emanating from the structure harmonized with the symphony. "It's working," Emma exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement. "They're responding." Ryan allowed himself a brief smile, though his expression remained cautious. "Good work," he said. "But we still need to figure out what they want from us." The breakthrough came unexpectedly. As the final notes of the symphony faded, the alien structure emitted a new series of patterns, this time accompanied by images projected directly onto the ship's hull. The pictures were abstract at first, showing swirling galaxies and planets, orbiting stars. Then they became more specific, depicting scenes of destruction, asteroids colliding, planets crumbling. Entire civilizations reduced to ash. Emma watched in stunned silence, her heart sinking as she realized the implications. "They're showing us the consequences of imbalance," she whispered. "If we continue expanding recklessly, we could destroy ourselves and maybe others too." Daniel frowned, studying the images closely. "It's like they're saying we're part of a bigger system, and our actions affect everything around us." Ryan crossed his arms, his expression grim. "So they see themselves as guardians? Protectors of cosmic order?" "It looks that way," Emma replied, nodding slowly. "And they think we're disrupting that balance." The images shifted again, this time focusing on humanity itself. Scenes of war, pollution, and technological advancement flashed before their eyes, each one accompanied by sharp, discordant sounds. It was clear the aliens viewed these aspects of human behavior as dangerous, not because they feared humanity, but because they believed such actions threatened the stability of the universe. Finally, the display ended with a single image. Earth, surrounded by a glowing barrier. The barrier flickered and dimmed, then disappeared entirely, leaving the planet exposed and vulnerable. Beneath it, a sequence of symbols appeared, ones the crew recognized from previous transmissions. This time, however, their meaning was unmistakable. Change or perish. Back inside the ship, the crew sat in stunned silence, processing what they'd just witnessed. Emma felt a mix of guilt and determination. The aliens weren't attacking out of malice. They were intervening to prevent catastrophe. But convincing the rest of humanity to change wouldn't be easy. "We have to tell them," Emma said finally, breaking the quiet. "Not just General Hayes or the Yuan, everyone. People need to see this. They need to understand why we can't keep going the way we are." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "Agreed. But how do we present it? We come back with talk of cosmic balance and existential threats. Most people will dismiss it as science fiction. What choice do we have?" Daniel asked, his tone urgent. "If we sugarcoat it, we risk losing credibility. And if we don't act fast, those attacks might escalate." Emma sighed, rubbing her temples again. "There has to be a middle ground, something that makes sense to everyone, even skeptics like Senator Bennett." After a long pause, Ryan spoke. "Up. We frame it as survival. Humans respond to threats when they feel personally affected. Instead of talking about cosmic balance, we focus on protecting Earth. We show them that cooperating with these beings isn't about surrender. It's about ensuring our future." Emma nodded slowly, liking the idea. "Okay, let's gather as much data as we can while we're here. Video footage, sensor readings, anything that proves what we've seen. Then we head back and prepare our case." Before leaving, the crew made one last attempt to communicate directly with the aliens. Using the same frequency they'd used to send their initial message, they transmitted a simple statement: "We hear you. We will change." Accompanying the words were images of Earth's natural beauty: rolling mountains, lush forests, and vibrant oceans, alongside depictions of humans working together to build sustainable technology. For a moment, there was no response. Then, the alien structure emitted a single, sustained tonal hum that resonated throughout the ship. It wasn't confirmation exactly, but it felt like acknowledgement. The crew exchanged hopeful glances, taking it as a sign that their message had been received. As Odyssey turned away from the structure and began its journey back to Earth, Emma stared out the window at the receding alien vessel. She felt a strange mix of relief and dread. They had accomplished what they set out to do. They had made contact, but the real challenge lay ahead. Convincing humanity to change its ways wouldn't be easy, especially with people like Senator Bennett pushing for military solutions. Still, Emma refused to give up hope. For the first time, humanity had proof that it wasn't alone in the universe. Whether that knowledge inspired fear or cooperation depended entirely on how they chose to respond. The journey back to Earth was quieter than the trip out, but the silence wasn't peaceful. Emma sat in her seat, staring at the footage they had recorded during their encounter with the alien structure. Her mind raced with questions and doubts. Would people believe them? Would governments listen? Or would fear drive them to prepare for war instead of peace? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the glowing images of destruction, the asteroids colliding, the planets crumbling, the barrier around Earth flickering out of existence. Those images haunted her, a vivid reminder of what was at stake. Daniel floated nearby, reviewing the sensor data on his tablet. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes betraying the lack of sleep. "Do you think we've done enough?" he asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Emma turned to him, startled by the question. "Enough for what?" "For them to convince everyone back home," Daniel clarified. "I mean, we've got videos, readings, all kinds of proof. But will it be enough to stop people from panicking?" Ryan, who had been quietly monitoring the ship's systems, chimed in. "It's not about whether we've done enough," he said firmly. "It's about how we present it. People are scared right now. If we come back talking about cosmic balance and existential threats, half of them won't take us seriously. We need to make this personal, show them why it matters." To them, Emma nodded slowly. "You're right. We can't just throw information at them and expect them to act. We have to connect with them emotionally." For the rest of the journey, the three of them worked together to craft their message. They edited the video footage, selecting scenes that highlighted both the beauty of Earth and the potential consequences of ignoring the aliens' warning. They added captions explaining the symbols and patterns they had deciphered, making sure everything was simple and easy to understand. By the time they reached Earth's orbit, they had a clear plan for how to share their findings. When Odyssey touched down at NASA headquarters, they were greeted by a sea of reporters, military personnel, and government officials. Cameras flashed as the crew stepped off the ship, their faces pale but determined.
Oh.
General Hayes approached first, his expression unreadable. "Well," he asked, his voice low but urgent.
What did you find?"
Emma took a deep breath, steeling herself for what came next. "Sir, we made contact," she began. "The beings behind the signals aren't hostile. They're trying to warn us. Their message is clear. Humanity's actions are disrupting the balance of the universe. If we don't change, we could destroy ourselves, and possibly others." General Hayes frowned, glancing at Ryan and Daniel for confirmation. Both men nodded solemnly. "And you're certain of this?" Pressed. "We have proof," Ryan replied, holding up a memory drive containing the footage and data. "Everything we saw and heard is on here. You need to see it." Without waiting for permission, Emma connected the drive to a nearby monitor and played the video. The room fell silent as the images of destruction filled the screen. Asps rippled through the crowd when the final scene appeared, Earth's protective barrier fading away. When the video ended, no one spoke for several moments. Finally, Senator Laura Bennett stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. "This is insane," she snapped. "You're telling me we should roll over and let these things dictate our future? What if this is a trick? What if they're using fear to manipulate us?" Emma clenched her fists, fighting to stay calm. "Senator, I understand your concerns, but this isn't about manipulation. These beings are far more advanced than we are. If they wanted to harm us, they could have done so already. Instead, they've given us a chance to fix our mistakes." Laura crossed her arms, glaring at Emma. "Fix our mistakes? That sounds awfully convenient. How exactly do you propose we fix centuries of progress overnight?" "It's not about undoing progress," Daniel interjected. "It's about finding a better way forward. Right now, we're expanding into space without considering the impact. We're building weapon systems and mining resources without thinking about long-term consequences. If we keep going like this, we'll only escalate tensions with each other and with them." Laura opened her mouth to argue further, but General Hayes raised a hand to silence her. "Enough," he said sharply. "We don't have time for infighting, Dr. Carter, Colonel Mitchell. I want a full briefing prepared for the UN Security Council within 24 hours. And Senator Bennett," he added, turning to her, "if you have any constructive suggestions, now would be the time to share them." The briefing took place in a large conference room at the United Nations headquarters. Representatives from every major nation gathered around a table, their expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. Emma stood at the front of the room, flanked by Ryan and Daniel. On the screen behind them, The video footage played again, accompanied by a detailed explanation of their findings as she spoke. Emma watched the audience carefully, gauging their reactions. Some looked thoughtful, nodding along as she described the aliens' warnings. Others seemed unconvinced, whispering among themselves or checking their phones. When she finished, the room erupted into arguments. "This is ridiculous," shouted a representative from Russia. "Can't just abandon our space programs because some unidentified entity tells us to," a Chinese diplomat countered. "It's not about abandoning progress, it's about doing it responsibly. If these beings are truly as powerful as they seem, we'd be fools to ignore their warnings." The debate continued for hours, growing increasingly heated. Laura Bennett pushed hardest for a military response, arguing that humanity couldn't afford to appear weak. "If we show hesitation, they'll see it as a sign of vulnerability," she insisted. "We need to demonstrate strength, not submission." Emma listened patiently, waiting for an opening to speak. Finally, she stood up, raising her voice just enough to be heard over the noise. "But strength isn't about aggression," she said. "Firmly, it's about making smart choices, even when those choices are hard. Yes, we're afraid. Yes, we don't fully understand what we're dealing with. But running blindly into conflict will only make things worse." Her words silenced the room momentarily. She pressed on, her tone softer, but no less determined. "These beings didn't attack us. They warned us. They gave us a chance to prove we're capable of learning, of adapting. Isn't that worth taking seriously?" For a moment, no one responded. Then, a young representative from India spoke up. "Dr. Carter is right," he said. "We owe it to ourselves and to future generations to at least try. If we fail, then we can consider other options. But not before." Slowly, others began to nod in agreement. Even some of Laura's allies hesitated, their confidence wavering. General Hayes seized the opportunity. "All right," he said, standing up. "Here's what we'll do. We'll issue a global statement acknowledging the aliens' warning and pledging to review our activities in space. At the same time, we'll continue monitoring the situation closely. If there's any sign of escalation, we'll reassess our strategy." The decision wasn't unanimous, but it was enough to move forward. As the meeting adjourned, Emma felt a small sense of relief. They hadn't solved everything, but they had taken the first step toward understanding. In the days that followed, the story spread across the globe. News outlets broadcast the video footage, sparking debates in living rooms, classrooms, and boardrooms. Protests erupted once again, but this time the messages were mixed. Some demanded immediate action to address climate change and reduce militarization in space. Others called for increased surveillance and defense spending, fearing the worst. Amid the chaos, Emma found herself pulled in every direction. She gave interviews, wrote articles, and attended countless meetings, all in an effort to keep the conversation focused on cooperation rather than conflict. It was exhausting, but she refused to give up. One evening, after another long day of work, Ryan joined her on the rooftop of NASA headquarters. The city lights twinkled below, a reminder of everything they were fighting to protect. "How are you holding up?" he asked, handing her a cup of coffee. Emma sighed, taking a sip. "Honestly, I'm not sure. Sometimes it feels like we're making progress, and other times, it's like we're shouting into the void." Ryan smiled faintly. "That's the thing about change. It doesn't happen overnight, but you're planting seeds. Whether people realize it now or later, what you're doing matters." Emma looked at him, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thanks, Ryan, I needed." To hear that, he shrugged. "Just telling the truth. Besides, someone has to remind you to take a break once in a while." They stood there for a while longer, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. For the first time in days, Emma allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. Humanity had a long road ahead, but maybe, just maybe, they could rise to the challenge. Weeks passed, and the world remained on edge. The global statement issued by the United Nations had sparked a mix of reactions. Some nations began scaling back their militarized space programs, focusing instead on peaceful exploration and sustainability initiatives. Others, however, continued to secretly develop advanced weapons systems, fearing that disarming would leave them vulnerable. Senator Laura Bennett became a vocal advocate for this second group, arguing that humanity couldn't afford to appear weak in front of an unknown threat. Emma watched these developments with growing concern, while she was relieved to see some progress toward cooperation. She knew the situation was far from resolved. Every day brought new reports of protests, political debates, and covert operations. It felt like the planet was balancing on a knife's edge, one wrong move away from disaster. To make matters worse, there were no further communications from the aliens. After the initial warning and the crew's encounter near Pluto's orbit, the beings had gone silent. Their massive structure still hovered at the edge of the solar system, but it emitted no signals, no lights, no signs of activity. It was as if they were watching to see what humanity would do next. Emma spent hours staring at images of the alien vessel, trying to imagine what its creators might be thinking. Were they satisfied with Earth's response, or had they already decided that humanity was beyond saving? She wished she could send another message, something more personal. But without knowing how to reach them, she felt powerless. One evening, as Emma worked late in her lab, Daniel burst through the door, his face flushed with excitement. "You're not going to believe this?" he said breathlessly, holding up his tablet. "What is it?" Emma asked, leaning forward. Daniel tapped the screen, pulling up a series of graphs and data points. "Remember those energy pulses that disabled military systems? I think I've figured out why they stopped." Emma frowned. "Why?" "They weren't just targeting weapons," Daniel explained. "They were also affecting Earth itself, causing minor earthquakes, disrupting power grids, even interfering with crop growth. At first, the effects were subtle, but if the pulses had continued, they could have caused serious damage." Emma's eyes widened. "Are you saying the aliens didn't just want to disable our weapons, they wanted to show us the consequences of our actions?" "Exactly," Daniel replied. "Every attack was a demonstration, a warning wrapped in a threat. They were showing us what could happen if we kept pushing the boundaries." Emma sank into her chair, overwhelmed by the implications. So it wasn't just about stopping aggression. It was about protecting Earth, too. They were trying to save us from ourselves. Daniel nodded grimly. "And we still don't know if they'll start again if we don't change fast enough." The next morning, Emma shared Daniel's findings with General Hayes and Ryan during an emergency meeting. Both men listened intently, their expressions darkening as the gravity of the situation sank in. "This changes everything," General Hayes said finally. "If the aliens resume their attacks, and now, we know they can harm Earth directly. We're looking at a potential catastrophe." Ryan crossed his arms, his jaw tight. "We need to act faster. Whatever goodwill we've built so far won't last if people keep dragging their feet." Emma agreed. "We have to push harder for transparency and cooperation. If governments are still developing secret weapons, we need to expose them. The aliens will see through any attempt to deceive them." General Hayes sighed, rubbing his temples. "Easier said than done. Half the world thinks we're overreacting, and the other half is too scared to trust anyone." "Then we take the fight public," Emma said firmly. "We release all the data, the energy pulse analysis, the footage of the alien structure, everything. Let people see the truth for themselves." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You realize that'll cause chaos, right? Governments won't like having their secrets aired out." "I don't care," Emma shot back. "If we don't get everyone on the same page, none of this matters. We're running out of time." After a long pause, General Hayes nodded reluctantly. "Do it, but be ready for the fallout." The decision to release the full data set was controversial, to say the least. Within hours of the information going public, social media erupted with outrage and panic. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire, accusing governments of hiding alien technology or plotting to surrender to extraterrestrial overlords. Protests grew larger and more volatile, with clashes breaking out between opposing sides. Some called for unity and reform, while others demanded retaliation against the aliens. Amid the chaos, Emma appeared on live television, addressing the world directly. Her voice trembled slightly, but her determination shone through. "This isn't about politics or fear," she said. It's about survival. The beings watching us aren't here to conquer. They're here to protect. They've given us a chance to change, to prove we're capable of living responsibly. If we waste that chance, we'll only have ourselves to blame. Our words resonated. With many sparking grassroots movements focused on environmental protection, disarmament, and sustainable space exploration, schools organized educational campaigns, businesses pledged to reduce their carbon footprints, and communities came together to support local initiatives. For the first time in years, humanity seemed united by a common purpose. But not everyone was convinced. Senator Laura Bennett used the opportunity to rally opposition, framing the movement as naive and dangerous. Trusting these aliens is a gamble we can't afford to take, she declared during a televised debate. What happens when they decide we're not worth saving? Then what? Emma faced her critics head-on, appearing alongside Laura in interviews and forums. Trust doesn't mean surrender, she argued. It means giving peace a chance before resorting to violence. If we prepare for war while ignoring the possibility of dialogue, we're doomed either way. Despite the backlash, Emma's message gained traction. Even some of Laura's supporters began to waver, questioning whether aggression was truly the best path forward, as weeks turned into months. The alien structure remained silent, but its presence loomed large in the collective consciousness. Humanity had begun to change, albeit slowly. Space agencies collaborated on joint missions, focused on science rather than defense. Nations signed treaties pledging to limit weaponization in space. Environmental policies tightened, driven by renewed awareness of Earth's fragility. Then, one night something unexpected happened. A faint signal appeared on NASA's monitors, a single tone, low and steady, emanating from the direction of the alien vessel. Emma raced to the control room, her heart pounding as technicians scrambled to analyze the transmission. "It's different this time," Daniel said, his eyes glued to the screen. "It's not a warning, it's acknowledgement." Emma stared at the display, tears welling up in her eyes. The tone shifted slightly, resolving into a harmonic pattern that matched the music they had sent during their encounter. It was a gesture of understanding, a sign that the aliens had heard humanity's efforts. Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder, smiling faintly. "Looks like we got through to them." Emma nodded, unable to speak. For the first time since the crisis began, she allowed herself to feel a sense of hope, not just for humanity, but for the possibility of coexistence. In the months that followed, the aliens gradually re-established contact, sending more complex messages and even allowing limited observation of their vessel. Scientists around the world worked tirelessly to decode their language, piecing together fragments of knowledge about their culture and values. Slowly, humanity began to understand that the beings saw themselves as stewards of the cosmos, tasked with maintaining balance and order. Though tensions remained, the threat of conflict faded. Humanity had been given a second chance, a fragile, uncertain gift, but one worth fighting for. As Emma stood on the rooftop of NASA headquarters one evening, gazing at the stars, she reflected on how much had changed. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and compromises, but for the first time in a long time, she believed they could rise to meet them. The universe was vast and mysterious. But perhaps, just perhaps, humanity had found its place within it.